So this is thoroughly dry now, and I'm fairly satisfied with what happened, and I'm glad the salt reacted in an acceptable way. Sort of resembles what I see happening in the photographic image of the frog. But what I would like to concentrate now on is the way the water lips up against the body of the frog. This part of the frog is out of the water, but it appears that the rest of the frog is mostly submerged. The lip of the water picks up these beautiful linear highlights of blue reflected in the sky, which I didn't draw in, so I'll do that now. I want to keep the blue relatively clean, so I'm going to paint it separately. I'm not going to add it on top of any of the brown color that I may be laying in. And I study the shapes very carefully. They're beautiful fluid linear elements that describe the shape of the frog. While at the same time reflecting the light of the sky. It's the accurate capturing of these lips of water that effectively communicate the feel of natural looking water. Strong highlight. I'm going to lift out a little later on with my incredible nib. And that highlight is picked up over here. And then we have all these little plantlets floating around. Then I'll gradually expand them outward throughout the painting. Yeah, look at all this in this area. Move that up, capture it. Right here, the leg juts out of the water a little bit, and you have all of these fascinating blue reflected sky shapes emerge. So you really have to look at what's going on. Don't draw from memory. Keep your eye on your subject and draw what you see. You should be looking more at your subject than at your painting. I hope that makes sense. Okay, what I'm going to do, all of this continues, what you see me doing over here, continues in this area and up around. But I think you got the idea of how I go about drawing into the surface to capture additional detail. So what I'm going to do is start painting in these blues, since these are the lighter values. Then I'll lay in my darker mixture of ultramarine blue and brown matte, or I can use brown matte. I meant to say burnt sienna, but I can also mix brown matte with the ultramarine blue to get a very effective dark. And remember, for the highlights in blue that you see here, I dripped in, after I had applied my wash of burnt sienna and ultramarine blue, I dripped in cerulean blue into that almost black color to achieve this. Now, how should I go about doing this? Actually, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay in a general wash of blue in this area and bring it up around here, and then I'll paint over that with my darker colors. If you're in the market for sable brushes, pure sable, Da Vinci Maestro is an excellent brand to consider. And with my number 8 Series 7 Winsor Newton, I think I'm going to pre-dampen this whole area with this, because I want the paint to gradually fade the blue that I'm going to apply. I could have masked these little doodads. They're all over the place. They are becoming annoying to go around. Maybe I will resort to masking. Okay, and I'm going to have a lot of blue in this area. A little bit of cobalt blue. Cobalt blue is fairly close to the color I need. Now, the game is going to be to integrate this successfully into the frog area. But I'm doing this right now in this fashion because I want to have a very clean blue established that I could easily paint over in areas with the darker colors. Watercolor painting is a process, and my approach evolves as I develop the painting and make decisions. I just added some Antwerp blue into my cobalt blue. Although this area of the leg is very dark, it does have some light blue highlights, so I'm painting the entire leg in using a light blue. And eventually, using a technique called negative painting, I'll paint over the leg with much darker colors, but I'll paint around the lighter highlights of blue. The water that edges up onto the frog, where the frog makes contact with the pond surface, is reflecting the light of the blue sky. So I'm continuing to lay in the mixture of Antwerp with cobalt blue throughout this area. I just swished my brush in clean water to remove excess paint. Now I'm moving the existing paint that's on the paper around a bit. With a damp brush, I squeezed out the brush after I swished it around in water because I wanted to remove excess water from the brush. I don't want to flood this area with lots of new water. I simply want to create a graded wash that modulates from more saturated to less saturated color. Let's let that dry. While that's drying, I can go back into the frog's eye. And maybe this is where I want to go with a smaller brush. If you're not sure of a color you're mixing, always have a piece of paper around to test it out. And that's from a mess of color I have from the previous washes that kind of accumulated down here, but I think it might be effective. There's some Winsor yellow medium in that. And now I am going to dip into my burnt sienna and see how, burnt sienna and a little bit of Winsor red. All of that may do it. Yeah, let's throw in a little ultramarine blue to darken it. I just speeded this section up because I do think this will make a lot more sense in fast motion than if you watched me paint it in real time. And then, after I finish experimenting with my approach to the eye, I'll jump back into painting the eye in real time. Notice I'm not blending on the paper. All I'm doing is laying in this color. Painting wet into wet and letting the colors intermix on their own. And I think that's where I want to go. So, we'll take this mess of color. It's a little bit hard for me to describe how I mixed it. But you could even start out with your burnt sienna. Leaving little highlights. Yeah, I'm going to cover the whole thing since it's going to be so dark down there. I don't like the way this burnt sienna shape looks right now, but I will be able to integrate it into the rest of the frog with overglazing after it dries. So we'll go with the ultramarine blue that I used in this area. Of course, you can also jump into your Payne's gray if you want. That would work. Got a little ultramarine blue. Throw in a little bit of Winsor yellow. The eye area will make much more sense as I paint in additional colors wet into wet, and then after that dries, I'll work in overglazes. Want to make it look like it's poking just above the water. Dots of brown matter are helping in this area, and then I'll have to get some in here. A couple little dark areas. One here and one here. Now I'm flowing in brown matter throughout this area, and then eventually I'm going to switch to burnt sienna and ultramarine blue to add some additional dark colors. I'm applying a mixture of burnt sienna and ultramarine blue. And I will switch to a pure mixture of burnt sienna and continue to overglaze with it. I've cleaned off my brush and now I'm applying pure burnt sienna as an overglaze. And now with a clean brush, I'm lifting out some color. Watercolor painting is not only a process of applying paint to the paper, it's also a process of lifting out color. At this stage, I have to let this area dry completely before I continue to build into it with color. This area seems to be dry enough for me to do a little bit more work and get a softer edge. I'm going to go back into my muddy mixture here. Combination of the brown matter and the burnt sienna has got totally mixed up, but it's okay because I need a color. I'm mixing that with a little bit of the ultramarine blue, and that'll give me a color that I can use to start achieving some of this eye detail. Okay, so with a little bit of that paint on the brush, start to draw in the shape of the detail in this area. Gets fairly dark as it goes down here. So into the wet brownish mixture, I apply a darker mixture of cobalt blue and burnt sienna. The frog's eye is basically outlined with that color, and I can place a little bit of that darker color in the right side eye of the frog. This is definitely detail work. Now I'm going to apply a little bit of Winsor red to accent and enhance the top part of the eye. It's another little dark area right there, being the pupil. I'm using a mixture of ultramarine blue and brown matter to paint in this dark color. Nice little amphibious creature. And then we'll play around with this area a little later on with some additional colors. What I'm gonna do, and I may use the incredible nib to do it, is I'm gonna work out a lot of white highlights in this area and over here and over here. I want to capture the effect of sunlight hitting that part of our Mr. Frog. And then down here, what I will continue to do with my darkish, bluish, grayish mixture is I'll start to suggest, looking carefully at my subject, paraphrasing what I see, adding a suggestion of the water lipping up onto the frog's body, but I'm leaving these slivers of blue highlights, and I see that underneath the water modulates in colors from the dark Paynes-like gray color to a little bit of burnt sienna. And notice the way this dark color transitions from thick to thin. Sort of just tapers out. And I love what happens when you drop in, even in these tiny little areas, additional colors. And here I'm dropping in yellow ochre, because that's what I see. And I've spent a lot of time in nature actually studying these things firsthand. And it's amazing the amount of colors within tiny little areas. Beautiful. Okay, I'm going to let that dry, and that's how I'm going to continue to build into the lip area of the water. To repeat, the lip area doesn't simply become a black line. It becomes an area where colors transition from hints of brown to hints of Payne gray to hints of yellow ochre, even suggestions of green. Here, let's take a little bit of cobalt blue and mix that with a little bit of Windsor yellow. And drop it in while it's still wet. So now I don't have a singular color dark area here. I have a modulation of a bunch of different colors, browns, green, blues, that suggest the dark lip-like patterns that the water creates as the viscosity pulls it up against the body of the frog. Okay, I'm going to let this dry for a while, come back later.